checked your assignments, and what I will do as I will check, then I'll discuss on that part. Okay, CV and EV again. Fine. So for now, I think we should go with this a new topic, and that is indirect utility function and expenditure function. Okay. So we'll discuss about first of all what is exactly this indirect utility function. The indirect utility function is, it's quite similar to the utility function, but as an ordinary utility function does not talk about, the maximum utility function. So this is giving you the maximum utility function. See, this V are denoting with this V, okay, instead U. So V is now the function of price and M. In an ordinary way, what we are talking about, discussing this utility function, that is just a function of, the commodities. It means we are only talking about either x1, x2, or the n number of x, fine. But here we are also mentioning the v is also the function of price and money too. The reason because the price here is indicating the number of goods prices. It means if my utility function is of x1 and x2, then this is the indication of P1 and P2, fine. And this further depends on your money income. So your budget constraint is also somewhere includes by this V. Okay, so that is the indirect utility function, and we call it is maximum utility function, because whenever the indifference curve is there and if budget slope is following the tendency over there, then we could reach on the consumer equilibrium point. So that is giving you an optimal choice where the utility is only talking about the commodity, but the V is also talking about the maximum utility which you can attain from the given budget level. Okay, so that budget also being considered here with the substitution effect, because P1 and P2 has also been taken over here. This V is a function of PM is non-increasing in P. Okay, it's non-increasing in P. It shows that if you're, wait, someone is asking permission. Okay, fine. So this says that it is non-increasing in P. Fine. It means if you want to increase your utility, fine, then this has to reduce. Your P1 and P2 has to reduce when your V would increase. So that is definitely a function of price, whether P1 is increasing or P2 is increasing. But if one of P is increasing, your V would decline. So that is why we always do consider that should be non-increasing in P and non-decreasing in M. Okay, it means your M should rise, and whenever your M is rising, your V is also rising. So this has direct relation and this has inverse relation. Now here we have is a function of PM is the homogeneous of degree 0 in PM. I hope you all remember the meaning of this homogeneous of degree 0. It means the sum of this power of scalar T, that is we are talking about a sum of scalar, that is the homogeneous of degree 0. It means your function property is equals to 0. That could be also 1. I think we have done some exercises when I was teaching this micro for this homogeneous of degree 0, homogeneous of degree 1, something we have done. Are you all remember about it? Yes, guys, do you know about it? This homogeneous of degree 0 means what?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not able to hear you, students. Shivani, Gopika, Varun, Dharmesh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what I'm asking, this you have covered in mathematics or not? This homogeneous of degree 0. That you
Yes,
all
ma'am.
know about it or not?
I don't
Huh?
remember. Don't
Don't
remember.
remember. Okay, I'll be taking this portion in my separate class. Okay, so that you will be knowing what is the meaning of this homogeneous of degree 0, homogeneous of degree 1. So this function has a
Okay, ma'am.
property. This function has a property homogeneous of degree 0. Fine. And then this also I'll be taking in my separate class, that is quasi-convex. For now, I can only tell you there we have, the concave function, we have convex function. So we do have a family of concave and a convex functions too. So this is also the part of quasi-convex. This shows that the function is partial convex. Okay. So we call it this, V is the function of Pm is quasi-convex in P. Okay. Here what we are writing, that is, it is a non-increasing in P. Fine. The non-increasing in P, because convexity always says that you desire more. Fine. But this is quasi-convex in P. It means you don't desire more and you also desire to. So both the things are there, but how you would actually reach mathematically and technically to this situation, I would tell you in another class. Okay. So you just keep in your mind that these properties we also will discuss in detail further. Then this function is continuous. We all know that P is also greater than 0, M is also greater than 0. So whenever, if you are increasing your utility based on this P and M, so if price is increasing at, the 1 rupee is increasing, 2 rupees is increasing, and at the same time, your utility is decreasing, maybe in same proportion, maybe in greater than that proportion, maybe in, less than the proportion. That is depend on the elasticity too, but it is continuous whenever it is getting changed, then this is also changing. So this follows the property of indifference curve, and here we have this two important properties, that it is homogeneous of degree 0 and that quasi convex. So keep these properties in your mind. Then first, I think we should know that how formulation of this indirect utility function would be done. So let's take first ordinary utility function. So we have here the utility is a function of x1 power half and x2 power half. Okay. And the budget constraint we have, that is m is equals to p1 x1 and p2 x2. Fine. Now you will be taking a Lagrangian function. Okay, so here this Lagrangian function, sorry, there we don't have comma, it's just a error. So you take this just a dot. Okay, it's a multiplication. So this x1 power half and x2 power half plus lambda, and here we have this equation m minus p1 x1, and here also minus. I'm just correcting. I don't know how this typing errors were left. Okay, so that there shouldn't be any confusion. Fine. So this is also a dot, right, like this. So that's okay now. So there will be no confusion. So we have here this Lagrangian function, this x1 power half and x2 power half plus lambda m minus p1 x1 and minus p2 x2. Fine. So what you're taking, you are here getting the value of x1, which is your demand function. This is the value of x2. This is again your demand function. So these two are what? Demand function. I'm not putting here the process of it. Okay, Gopika, last time you asked me. So I'm directly reaching to this because we already have done this ordinary demand function. So from Lagrangian equation, what you need to do, you have to go with the first order condition of x1, x2, and this lambda, and from that itself you will be deriving this value of x1 and x2. Then what we are doing now, this value of x1, what you have got, this you will now put here or substitute here at the place of x1. And here also the value of x2 you will substitute. So your utility function, here you have dot. So your utility function would now be like this. Okay. So this gives you m by 2p1 power 0.5 and p2 power 0.5. Now this is actually the value of v, and the v is what? Your indirect utility function, because it's giving you the maximum utility, because it's talking about the prices and also the m. So both the things are there. So that's why you have substituted the demand function, which is actually the demand function of x1, and then this whole utility function would be converted into the indirect utility function. Is that clear to you? How we reach from the ordinary utility function to indirect utility function. This is now the function of m, and this is now the function of p. You can see it. There is no x1 and x2 we have. Okay. As we have seen, the V is a function of price and M. So my utility, indirect utility, is depending upon M. Here U is depending upon x1 and x2. This is direct. Okay. Indirect means V. It means indirectly I'm talking about this. If I want to maximize my utility, then indirectly I'm talking about this. So this is depending upon what? This is depending upon M and this is depending upon P1 and P2. So if I want to increase my utility, then of course X1 is giving me utility. It is based on P1, how much P1 is there. X2 is giving me utility, how much P2 is there, and how much money income I have. So indirectly, this function is giving me the same this utility. But this we call indirect one and this we call indirect one. Is that clear to you guys?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'll go for the expenditure function. So we have the properties of expenditure function. Here E we denote as the expenditure function. E is a function of P and U. So the P is again the prices and the U is you're talking about the utility. Okay. So this expenditure function is non-decreasing in P. Okay. It means it should increase in P. It means if your price is increasing, then your expenditure is increasing. Okay, so E would be the function of P. So expenditure function is exactly showing a direct relationship with this prices. So as price more, then your expenditure definitely would be more. If price is less, your expenditure would be less as per the given budget. And then the second property what we have, this is homogeneous of degree 1 and P. This homogeneous of degree 1 is following basically your production function property. Okay, we have studied the product exhaustion theorem in micro 2 in the semester third. Okay, so product exhaustion theorem is also the one property that we do follow, that is homogeneous of degree 1 in P. The homogeneous of degree 1 is again we are talking about the T scalar, the value is 1. Okay, it means the power of the function is 0 and that is giving you know the value of 1. So we'll also do this separately along with this homogeneous of degree 0, because the different form of production functions we have, here we are talking about with reference to utility, and here we are talking about with reference to production function. So here, this E would be the function of this price and utility is concave in P. See, it is concave. The reason, because it is non-decreasing means it is always increasing, and that is why this is now having a feature of concavity. Okay, I'm not mentioning quasi concave over here. This is just concave in the prices. Then we have its concave functions also we would see in our quasi concave and quasi convex lecture. Okay, so you should know about what is convex function, what is the concave functions also. Then EPU is continuous in prices. Okay, again a value of prices would change, your value of expenditure would also change. So prices would be greater than 0 always. And if H is a function of price and utility. H is what? H is your expenditure minimizing, or we say it is your compensated demand function. Okay, and we all know the in compensated demand function, this value P1 x1 plus p2 x2 would be here, and this x1 and x2 would be here. And sorry, the x1 utility minus x1 and x2 would be here. Okay, so it will be reversed. So that is your compensated demand function, but this compensated demand function is also the function of prices and utility. So we call it expenditure minimizing bundle, necessary to achieve utility level at prices P. So we need this because you would derive Shepherd lemma from that itself. Okay, so if you will get the expenditure function from expenditure function, if you would differentiate it with respect to the prices, okay, if you differentiate the expenditure function with reference to the prices, then you will be getting this compensated demand function, or in another words, this is the Shepherd lemma. I'll come on that. I'm also covering this portion. But first of all, we'll see that how expenditure function would be derived. So this expenditure function is a, sorry, this is the indirect utility function. Fine. The indirect utility function is a function of P1, P2, and M. We already have seen, and that is equals to M by 2P1 power 0.5 and P2 power 0.5. We already have seen that here. There we derived this this indirect utility function. So we have here this indirect utility function. Now from this indirect utility function, you can derive expenditure function. Or in other words, this expenditure function is just reverse and opposite case of this indirect utility function. So if you want to derive it, this M would be acting as expenditure function now, because M is nothing, based on your money income, your expenditure would be determined. So here this M value you need to derive. So utility multiplied by this whole is giving you now expenditure function. So this is just a very simpler way how to get this expenditure function. But sometimes you are not asked, to calculate or estimate this indirect utility function, and directly expenditure function has to be derived. Then what to do? In that case, alternative approach can be followed. And the alternative approach says that we'll be taking the same utility function. Again, there is a dot. Okay. So same and same thing. Again, I'm typing. So that's why I think I did copy paste. So it's just dot. Fine. And this is your budget constraint. And now from this information, you need to get this information. And this is what marginal utility of x1 divided by marginal utility of x2 and p1 by p2. So this is the condition of your MRS, fine. So this condition of MRS, such information, we need to get this from this. So how will you get this? Marginal utility of x1, we know it is, you need to differentiate total utility with respect to x1, and you'll be getting this. Okay, so here this is your total utility, and from this you need to differentiate it with respect to this x1. So you'll be getting half x1 power minus half, and x2's power also half. Similarly, marginal utility of x2. So this you have got here. Fine. So now both of you'll substitute here in this equation, marginal utility of x1 by x2, and this gives you finally this reduced form. And this says that x2 by x1 is equals to p1 by p2. Okay. And x2 further would be equals to p1 by p2 and multiply by x1. Okay. So further what I will do, here you got the value of x2 from this information, okay? And now this value of x2, I'll substitute in the utility function. I have this utility function, x1 power half and x2 power half. So I substitute here this utility, x2 value here, okay, which is p1 by p2 multiplied by x1, and the whole power is half. Now this gives you this reduced form, x1 multiplied by p1 power half divided by p2 power half, and further simplify it and gives you value of x1. Okay, so this is the value of x1. Now the same way and the same approach you need to follow, and you will be getting the value of x2. It means here you get the value of x1. Okay, and then this x1 value you can substitute here and get the value of x2. Okay, so this same process will be followed. So x1 and x2 you got. Now what you need to do, in the budget constraint, you need to substitute it. So m is equals to p1 x1 plus p2 x2 is my budget constraint. So this x1 value I'll substitute here with this x1, and this x2 will be substituted by this value. So this you need to simplify, and further this gives you utility multiplied by 2p1 power 0.5 p2 power 0.5. See, this value is similar to this value. Okay, so this is nothing, this is your expenditure function. Is there any doubt in this? Shivani, Gopika?
No,
No?
ma'am.
Clear? Completely? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Let's proceed for Shepard's lemma. Shepard's lemma talk about what? That same thing. It is compensated demand function. So I'm putting here H. H we denote as compensated demand function. So H is also the function of this your PM, and we already have this information, that is the expenditure function. M is equals to you multiply by this to P1 power 0.5 P2 power 0.5. So what we need to do is simply differentiate this m with respect to p1. So we got this value, the 0.5 will be multiplied by 2, this gives you 1. So p1 power would be minus 0.5, p2 power would be 0.5. It gives you the value of Shepard's lemma, or the compensated demand function. Clear? Now, we also should know about the Roy's identity. Okay, the Roy's identity exactly talks about what? This is actually related to indirect utility function. The Roy's identity is nothing. There was an economist who has given the proof that from indirect utility function itself, okay, from indirect utility function itself, you can reach to your demand function. This is what X1. So from this also, because from this you are reaching to this indirect utility function, and from this itself you can reach to your demand function. Why this is so? Because indirect utility function talks about the indirect way prices and the money income. So if you indirectly talk about this price and money income, there is something hidden, that is what your demand function. So that's why the Roy's identity is just a proof by economist Roy, and he has given the alternate formula for that to reach on the demand function. So see how you can reach on the demand function. First, you need to differentiate your indirect utility function with respect to prices, divided by, again, you need to differentiate your indirect utility function with respect to money income. Okay, so from given indirect utility function, this is given indirect utility function, I am taking the same one, this m divided by 2p1 power 0.5, p2 power 0.5. So taking the same reference of it, uh, I'll calculate this Roy's identity. So this is my indirect utility function. So I would differentiate this V with respect to prices, and here I am taking price 1. Fine. Here I put I now. I means you can take 1 or 2, but if I want to calculate my demand function x1, then I would talk about only p1. If I want to calculate demand function x2, then I'll talk about this p2. Okay. So here it is p1. So if it is P1, then this gives you this value minus 0.25 P1 power 1.5 P2 power minus 0.5 and multiply by M. So if you will shift this thing above, okay, so this half would be converted as 0.5, and here P1 power would be minus 0.5, P2 power would be minus 0.5 multiplied by M, and the whole function would be simplified like this by differentiating this with the P1. Is that clear? Same way, you'll differentiate it with respect to money income. Okay, so this gives you 0.5, P1 power 0.5, P2 power minus 0.5. This gives you multiply by M. Okay, sorry, M would be reduced because now you have differentiated it. Now this you,
Ma'am,
yes.
ma'am, can you explain this once more?
Which one? This
Roy's
whole
identity. Yes, ma'am.
how? How, what are you specifically asking?
No, ma'am. No, this second equation.
This, you mean this one, na?
No, ma'am. The U P1 P2 and
This
this
one,
one.
na? This too we already have got, na? We already have calculated here. This is nothing. This is your indirect utility function. This this is your
Yes,
V.
ma'am.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So from
Uh,
this itself, you are differentiating. From this itself, you are differentiating this function with respect to ones in P1 and with respect to M. Okay, so this is the value of differentiation only with respect to P1, and this is with respect to M. Still you have a doubt in that?
no,
Yes?
ma'am. No.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
here, ma'am, this first equation that xi is.
Oh, this one. This is just a formula for the Roy's identity.
Oh,
It's Roy's identity. Okay, the Roy has given this formula. And from this formula itself, when you will substitute these values, this gives you minus 0.5 P1M. Okay, this is nothing. This is M by 2 P1. Okay, and always because it is an inverse, x1's value, or whether x1 or x2, both values will always be negative. Okay, because the demand curve is always shows this way, an inverse one. So this value is always minus x1 or minus x2. Okay, so here the value of this x1 would be m by 2p1, or you can say m by 2p1 is equals to minus x1. So this is what? This is the demand function you got from this. You see here, we started with this Lagrangian equation, and from Lagrangian equation you are getting this, you are getting this. This inverse sign would be there because always we do consider it is an inverse, but here the absolute sense it says always m by 2p1. So that's why here we have this m by 2p1. So this is nothing, this is the value of demand function. But this is negative. You see here I haven't put this minus sign, but it always estimate this negative sign. Okay, is that clear to everyone? Even in the Roy's identity, I think I need to check it, but there is always minus sign given. Okay, always there is a minus sign given. If it is given, then this minus and this minus will automatically be plus, and this further would be x1 is equals to m by 2p1. But conceptually, this follows negative sign. Is that clear to you guys? How is that been calculated?
Ma'am, can you explain Shepherd's lemma once more?
So the Shepherd's lemma is your expenditure function, and this expenditure function would be differentiated either with respect to P1 or P2. Here I am differentiating with respect to P1, then it is giving me the value of H. H is nothing, this is your compensated demand function. So if you will go with Lagrangian equation, okay, Lagrangian equation is suppose for this function, you will put this x1 and x2 now will be constant. It is nothing. This is your Hicksian demand function. So that is why we denoted with the h. So here we will make this constant because your utility will remain constant. So u0 minus x1 power half and x2 power half. Let's go there अपने ठीक हाँ हाँ ठीक अच्छा ठीक ठीक है ठीक Okay, so utility 0 minus x1 power half and x2 power half. So your budget constraint would change. And here what you will do, you will keep this variable part. It means P1 x1 plus P2 x2. So this we already have done in our Hicksian demand function, or we say it is a compensated demand function. So from that itself, whenever you will derive the value of x1 and x2, this gives you always this Shepherd's lemma value. This value you'll be getting. I hope we already have done. If you want to see
Ma'am,
it,
where is
huh? Yes, Gopika, you asked.
ma'am, so we'll differentiate with respect.
It's
Ma'am,
simply here what we
ma'am,
did,
we
we
will only
just
differentiate with
differentiated.
respect. Ma'am, we just differentiate only with P1, not with P2.
Yes, not P2 because here I'm only talking about Hicksian demand function with respect to P1.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
Okay, so that's why we differentiated only this. So this gives me Hicksian demand function for x1 only. This is Hicksian demand function for x1 only because you differentiated only p1. If you will differentiate it with respect to p2, this gives you Hicksian demand function for x2. Now it's clear.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If you want me, I can go back to this ordinary demand function slides. Then there is also the compensated demand function too. You want that too?
It's clear, ma'am.
Okay, so let me
No,
go.
ma'am, no, ma'am.
No, you don't need.
No,
Fine.
ma'am, it is clear.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
now for Roy's identity, we'll talk about the proof of it. Okay, the Roy's identity has some proof. Okay, so we'll follow the proof. What is the proof actually we are trying to? Because I told you this always gives you minus x1. Because here in formula also I think there would be minus. So this is x minus x1 always or x2 whatever. I'm putting here I only. So this formula always would be equivalent to minus x1 or x2. Okay, so this we have to prove. Again here it is dot x1 power half and multiply by x2 power half and budget constraint. So make a Lagrangian equation. This gives you x1 power half and x2 power half plus lambda. Again I think I should correct it again. Why to go it's negative, it should be negative. Okay, so here we have minus and then further यहाँ पे भी change कर देते हैं. Here we have dot. Fine. So let's go now. Okay. So we have this Lagrangian equation. And now what I will do, I'll differentiate first with respect to P1 as we were doing here. That is differentiated with respect to P1. So it gives me minus lambda x1. The Lagrangian equation differentiated with respect to M. So as this we have done or this. So this gives me the value of lambda. And now both will be divided each other. So this gives me minus x1. So this way, from Lagrangian equation also, you can get a proof of Roy's identity that always would be equals to minus x1 or minus x2 because we are differentiating with respect to P1. If you'll differentiate with respect to P2, you'll be getting minus x2. Is that clear to you?